Hey everyone. Welcome back to Strange Mind 6. I'm your host Ruby, and today we're going to be reading more of Creepers. This one is going to be volume 6, and it's called The Gravedigger by Edgar J. Hyde. Over 4 million copies have been sold worldwide of this whole entire, I guess you could say, this whole entire franchise of Strange Things Are Happening in Creepers. A lot of them were sold. I actually, if you ever want to find some of these books and keep it for yourself, I actually found it in Dollar Tree, to be honest. I saw them and I was like, wait a minute, they have horror books? So I grabbed them, and yeah, I decided that why not, give it a shot and see if you guys like it or not. And hopefully you guys do. And without further ado, my dear friends, we're going to get into it. But before we do, please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button if you can. It would mean the world to me if you did. And grab a snack, grab a drink, and sit back, and let's begin. Chapter 1: The New House. With every crack of lightning, Jamie's shadow was thrown against the wall. Lightning lit up his room for a split second before it was covered again with a blanket of darkness. Outside, the icy night wind swirled around the graveyard, whistling through the gravestones and running down the old dirt track past the trees to the house at the bottom of the hill. Inside the house was in total darkness. The storm had knocked out the power a couple of hours ago, leaving Jamie, his younger sister Paula, and his father Andrew fumbling around their new house in the pitch black, falling over unopened boxes, and, as usual in these circumstances, trying to scare the living daylights out of each other. Jamie stood at the bottom of the long spiral staircase that led upstairs to their bedrooms. He could hear someone moving around, squeaking the bare floorboards in his father's room. It must be Dad, he thought. Paula's too light to make that kind of noise. Slowly, he began to climb the stairs, looking for Paula. He had an idea where his dad was, but Paula could be hiding anywhere waiting to pounce. By now, the storm outside was getting worse. As Jamie crept past the window on the landing, another bolt of lightning lit up the staircase, and the tall, dark figure that was creeping up the stairs behind him. Jamie continued to make his way up the stairs, completely unaware of the ghostly intruder. As he reached the top, he paused for a second, peering cautiously around the corner. The door to his dad's bedroom was ajar, but not enough for Jamie to see inside. Knowing his family like he did, he knew that someone inside the room was waiting to jump out, screaming and yelling. Then Jamie heard breathing behind him. Quick as a flash, he turned to see, but there was only darkness. The tall, dark figure that had floated behind him on the stairs was gone. The whole house was silent, eerily silent. The creak of the bathroom door shattered the silence, and in a second Jamie dashed into his little sister's room, leaving the door open a little so that he could still see out. Then he saw it. The tall figure that followed him from downstairs passed through the bathroom door, turned and made its way along the hall toward him. It was a very tall man, dressed in a long black cloak, with swept back hair and bright white teeth that shone in the moonlight whenever he passed a window. Before he reached his father's room, the door opened and a familiar face stepped out from behind it. It was Paula, the dark man gliding along the hallway toward her. Paula, oblivious to what was over her shoulder, slipped out of the room and tiptoed her way down the hallway. Jamie stood, watching everything from behind the bedroom door, his heart beating faster and faster. The man came closer and closer. Then, suddenly, Paula stopped. Directly across from where Jamie stood was his own bedroom. Paula opened the door as quietly as she could, which was difficult because the door creaked with even the slightest movement, and stepped inside, closing the door behind her. Jamie could hear his heart beating loud in his ears as he watched the dark figure hover outside the door with his long black cloak and dazzling white teeth. Jamie could tell he was a vampire. The vampire waited a few moments before disappearing through the door after Paula. Jamie stepped out from behind Paula's door into the hallway, took a deep breath, and prepared to charge. 1, 2, 3, he counted, and as quick as his legs could carry him, he burst through the door. "Ah!" he screamed as he ran into the middle of the room. Whoo! The roar of 6 separate voices came back at him. Jamie spun around. His dad was standing beside Paula, accompanied by a vampire, a mummy, a werewolf, and a man carrying his head under his arm. They were all laughing. Jamie took one look at them and burst out laughing himself. Welcome to the Price family household. The Prices are no ordinary family. Ordinary families are usually scared of ghosts, but ghosts don't scare Jamie, his sister, or his father. In fact, there are certain ghosts who are more friendly with the Prices. They are part of the family. There's Count Vanya, an unusual vampire who hates the sight of blood. There's also Mummy, who has fascinated Jamie and his family late into the night with his tales of ancient Egypt, and who amuses them even more by constantly tripping over his bandages. Then there's Wolfie, the world's only vegetarian wolf, who every time he catches a glimpse of himself in the mirror runs screaming from the room. Last but not least, there's Lex Killian, an honorable old gentleman who was a passenger on the Titanic when it sank. Now Lex carries his head under his arm, accidentally spitting out salt water every time he opens his mouth. Together, they are the only 4 ghosts that Jamie, his dad, and his sister have not laid to rest. Not just because they are good friends, but because they helped Jamie's dad earn a living writing horror novels. It takes more than an ability to see ghosts to be able to write good horror story. Jamie's dad relies on the 4 friendly ghosts to give him all the information he needs about real ghosts and what makes them tick. that's what makes Andrew Price horror novels so good. In fact, it's for that reason that Jamie's dad bought their new house in the middle of the graveyard, much to Jamie and Paula's disapproval. Although they're not scared of ghosts, Jamie and Paula realized that as soon as their new classmates heard they lived in a graveyard, they would be regarded as either weird or spooky. But of course, their dad is the same as every dad. As soon as he gets something into his head, there's no getting it out again. Whenever Jamie and Paula would tell him about their fears, he would simply smile, wink his eye, and say, "Trust me," which always meant that nothing was going to go as planned. "We nearly had you there, Jamie," said his father gleefully, but now everyone was giggling out loud. Some, like Lex Killian, were giggling uncontrollably. "No, you didn't," replied Jamie. "I knew you were all here. I was just trying to scare you all first." "Well, you didn't scare me, that's for sure," said Paula. "I think you scared yourself more than anyone." Their dad agreed. "Yeah, Jamie, you didn't scare me either. What about you, Count Vanya?" Count Vanya floated into the middle of the room, still giggling. "Well," he said, "there was no blood involved, so I wasn't the slightest bit scared." "What about you, Mummy?" asked Andrew. "No," came the muffled shout from Mummy. "It's the funniest thing I've seen in 2,000 years." Jamie was now getting a little frustrated. He knew he wasn't afraid, but no one else in the room believed him. "You never scared me," he said, trying to convince them. "And Mummy, if that's the funniest thing you've seen in 2,000 years, then you really should get out more often." No sooner had the words left Jamie's mouth than the room was filled with laughter once again. "Yeah, Mummy, you ought to get out more often," shouted Wolfie. "Oh, really?" Mummy retorted. "Well, why don't you take a look in the mirror?" All around the room, red faces were laughing hysterically. "I wish the power went out every night," thought Jamie. "This is so much fun." Outside, the wind continued to circle and swirl around the graveyard, and the rain continued to bounce hard off the windows. Inside, Jamie and the others began making their way downstairs, their faces still red from laughing. Suddenly, another crack of lightning lit up the graveyard to reveal a tall, spooky figure standing under a tree at the end of the driveway. It was Ebenezer Crim, the graveyard gardener. He had been standing out in the rain for some time watching the house. Unable to see in because of the power outage, he stood there, not laughing or smiling, just staring. Chapter 2. Dominoes. With a loud thump, Jamie's dad dropped the book onto the desk, scattering the dust from beneath its pages in every direction. The noise it made echoed off the tall bookshelf and could be heard at the other end of the library. "Shh," said the elderly man sitting at the desk across from them. It wasn't the first time the man had scolded Andrew. In fact, this was the 5th time Andrew had made a clatter. The last time it took an angry-looking librarian to get him to quiet down. "Sorry," offered Andrew, looking around at the other tables to see if anyone else was getting annoyed with him, before proceeding to pull his chair noisily across the wooden library floor. Jamie and Paula tried hard not to laugh. The best Jamie could do was put his hand in front of his mouth, resulting in a loud pig-like snorting noise, which then resulted in another shh from the man at the other table. "You two be quiet. You're making too much noise," said Andrew. "Us be quiet?" asked Paula, incredulously. "You're the one who was told to quiet down." "Not true," replied her father. "I was just having an adult conversation with the librarian. That's what grown-ups do." "Yeah, that's right, Paula," added Jamie. "Dad was having a mature conversation with the lady." "Thank you, Jamie," said his father, but before he could continue, Jamie interrupted him, and then she told him to shut up or get out. It doesn't take much to make Paula laugh, and Jamie's latest remark was no exception, forcing her to giggle out loud and turn heads all over the library, once again bringing another shh from the other table and yet another apology from her dad. "When can we go home?" Jamie asked his dad, almost pleading with him. "When I found what I'm looking for," his dad replied sternly. "Well, what is it exactly that you're looking for?" asked Paula, trying very hard to sound helpful, but like Jamie, she was also desperate to get home. "I'm looking for something suspicious about our new house, some record of ghastly encounters or details of a ghostly past," said her father, trying his best to involve them. Now Paula was beginning to pay more attention. "Do you think there could be dead bodies buried at our house?" "Gee, let me think. We live in a house in the middle of a graveyard, you know, Paula. I think you could be right. I think if we look hard enough, we might find some dead bodies buried somewhere." Paula hated it when Jamie made fun of her. It was something Jamie liked to do to his little sister at every opportunity. "Jamie, stop poking fun at your sister," his father said. "Do something useful and start looking through these old newspaper clippings." Jamie really didn't want to, but in the end decided to help, if only to get home quicker. The hours passed with Jamie, his father, and his sister searching through history books, flicking through newspaper clippings, and looking into the history of some of the people buried in the graveyard. But it was all for nothing. No horrific history, no ghastly past, no tales of ghosts or anything being haunted. Nothing. Jamie's father slammed the final history book closed, forcing dust from beneath its cover and straight up to his nose. He tried hard to contain a sneeze that somehow managed to squeeze between both his hands and out into the cold air of the library. Jamie and Paula were both sleeping with their heads on the desk, having given up on ever finding something remotely spooky. "Jamie, wake up," his father said, trying hard to shout a whisper. Jamie raised his head from the desk. His hair was flat on one side. He barely opened his eyes as he whispered back, "What is it? What did you find?" "Nothing," replied his father, "but it's time to go home. They're closing the library for the night." Jamie gave Paula a shake to wake her up, but Paula was so exhausted she hardly felt a thing. Instead, she just rolled her head to the other side, making a loud grunting noise as Jamie continued to shake her and pull her hair. He eventually managed to wake her by slamming an encyclopedia onto the desk just a few inches from her head. As they made their way to the exit, the librarian was already holding the door open, waiting for them to leave. "Thank you," said Andrew as they passed through the doorway. "You're welcome," replied the librarian, obviously glad to see Jamie and his family leaving. "Will you be back tomorrow?" she asked politely. No. I think we managed to look at everything we needed to," said Andrew, holding the door open for Jamie and Paula. As they walked out into the cold night air, Jamie remembered that it had been daylight when they went into the library, and how his father had claimed that it wouldn't take him long. Jamie looked at his watch and realized that was nearly 6 hours ago. The house looked spooky enough during the day, but at night it looked even scarier. As Jamie's dad drove into the driveway, the wind seemed to get stronger and blow the leaves that had fallen from the trees high into the air. Paula zipped her jacket up and prepared to get out of the car and step into the freezing wind that was howling and whistling all around them. Jamie looked up at the leaves that were blowing wildly into the dark night sky. Even the trees look evil, he thought, as he jumped out of the car and ran to the front door of the house. The door creaked open, loud and slow, and one by one, Jamie, his sister, and his father emerged from behind it into the hallway of the house. As their dad pushed the door closed, some leaves blew inside and came to rest in front of Paula's feet. "You two go upstairs and get into your pajamas. I'll make some hot chocolate," said their dad. Jamie and Paula had just begun to climb the long spiral staircase when they heard their father shout to them from the kitchen, "Jamie, Paula, come here for a second." "What now?" muttered Paula as she and Jamie turned and made their way back downstairs. In the kitchen, Count Vanya, Mummy, Wolfie, and Lex sat around the table. Jamie had seen this before. It meant that it was conference time. Either they had already done something or they were about to. It didn't take long to find out that it was the former. "We didn't mean any harm," exclaimed Count Vanya. "We were just having some fun." "It's true," continued Lex Killian. "We were just playing a game. It was an accident." "What exactly happened?" asked Andrew. "Well, do you know how to play the game Leapfrog?" asked Wolfie. "Yes, of course," said Paula. "Well, it was kinda like that, only we weren't jumping over each other," said Wolfie. "So what exactly were you jumping over?" questioned Jamie. "Gravestones," came a muffled answer from Mummies. "Gravestones!" yelled Andrew. "What were you thinking?" Wolfie started to get upset. "It was his fault," he said, pointing to Mummy. "We were all having fun until Clumsy Clogs tried it and fell over his bandages straight into one." "Well, if you knocked one over, I guess I'll have to be the one that picks it up," said Andrew angrily. "Well, it wasn't just the one," Count Vanya interrupted. "So how many?" Jamie asked. "I think the final figure was somewhere in the region of 23, stuttered Lex. "How on earth did you manage to knock over 23 gravestones?" yelled Andrew. "It was a bit like when you put a lot of dominoes close together in a line, then push over one by one," muttered Mummy sheepishly. "Did anyone see you?" Paula asked. The four of them looked at each other with blank expressions. The truth was, none of them noticed if they were being watched, so they couldn't be sure. "I think the four of you should keep a very low profile for the next couple of days," bellowed Andrew. "Don't you?" "Yes," came their murmured, half-hearted replies. And I think you should start right now, said Andrew. One by one they stood up from the table and disappeared through the wall, apologizing as they went. Jamie looked at Paula. It's been a long day, he said. Yep, Paula replied, and I've got a funny feeling we haven't heard the last of it. And that is the end of Chapter 2, my dear friends. Tune in next video for Chapter 3, Accused. This has been Ruby, signing off, and may you have a wonderful morning, noon, or night whenever this video reaches you. Bye bye.